What's up, everybody? I'm Ryan Tuerck, and welcome to this week's response video here at Nameless Performance, getting the brand new 2016 Scion by Toyota. Car ready for Formula D this season, ready to do some testing pretty soon. Before we get any further on that, let's get to some questions.
All right, we got Tuerck and Love. Do you guys corner balance your pro drift cars? How's it feel in comparison to your street drift cars that presumably aren't corner balanced? Absolutely, we corner balance our race cars. It makes a huge effect on keeping the car very stable for the left and right corners. It also helps us to know exactly where to place weight to get the most advantage. And actually, I do corner balance every car I own. Not so much, say, the Datsun, but the turbo car, my 240, and I actually did the M one time, although with all the passengers it kind of gets thrown right out the window. But on the other cars, yes, it is an advantage. It helps you set your ride heights easy, and it makes the car feel nice and neutral. And if you have access to a corner balance machine, you should absolutely use it on every vehicle.
From Zico DS, hey Ryan and Chris, what's the tire size in your different cars, and how does that relate with power or weight? Love the show, guys. Cheers from Portugal. Thanks for the question, dude. The tire size I run in the Pro Formula D car is a 285 35/18 rear, and in the front it's a 245 40/18. And on the demo / street FRS car, I'm running the 265 35/18 in the rear, and then the same 245 40/18 in the front. And the reason for the change is the Pro car needs the maximum amount of grip for tandem to try to keep up with the next driver in front of you so you can keep on his door. Whereas the street and demo car isn't made for competition, so you don't really need to have the maximum grip amount, where it saves a lot of stress in the drivetrain, doesn't wear out parts as fast, doesn't wear out the clutch as much. So everything's a little bit easier. You don't set it up for maximum grip, and it kind of saves things and less money out of pocket for certain parts.
Sled fun and moto. How nervous are you when you go on Formula Drift? And also, what is the limit of horsepower in FD? Well, there is no limit in horsepower in FD, which is why Formula Drift is becoming more and more popular around the country. It's open engine transplants, open horsepower, any kind of power outer you want, and it makes for an insane show when you got these 1500 horsepower cars ripping around the track. And then as far as how nervous I get at Formula Drift, yes, in the early days you obviously get nervous. You got to spend time, getting yourself in those situations, knowing how to drive yourself out of a bad situation. Also just the stresses of, the whole event in general, people watching, your team relying on you. Is the car going to fail? But over time, you eventually learn how to turn all that off. For some people, it happens very quickly. Some people, it never happens. And that's why you see, people making mistakes out on the track. The drivers that can kind of just switch everything off, feel the car and lay the rundown, are the guys who win championships.
Next question is from Logan Wilson. Hey Ryan, I'm taking some automotive and mechanical classes in high school right now, and I know how to weld. I'm also going to buy a Mark III 89 Supra. Should I go to college and take some more automotive classes, or just gain experience by drifting, like hands-on experience? Also, what did you do? Go to college. Should I get a 240 SX instead? Those are some tough questions. I didn't go to college, and I got my experience when I was growing up from mainly my dad, who taught me how to use tools and wrench on cars, or not cars, but wrench on motorcycles or dirt bikes. And then that kind of just steamrolled into cars when I got into drifting. So I knew a little bit, but not a ton. Wiring was out of my, wiring is still out of my threshold. I don't do that. But going to school and getting an education is going to be the best thing no matter what. I mean, having accolades and a diploma and a certificate that, you can bring to you can put on your resume and bring to a job interview is going to go a lot further than just saying, I have all this experience. You could be a great mechanic in either direction that you choose. It's just going to be a little easier if you choose the educational route. Car-wise, if it was me, I would be getting the 240 SX just simply because the parts are readily made. Most of it's all already proven on the track and works really well, and there's a million things to choose from at a ton of different price points. So there's always going to be something that suits your wallet choice than a 89 Supra, which is also a rad car. And I like to see those things when they're all done up proper and actually have legit setups on them. But you don't see that too often, so it's definitely a little different and definitely a cool direction to go either way.
Link CMS 2 Town. Is power steering and ABS necessary for Formula Drift or drifting in general? Well, ABS is definitely not necessary and not recommended for drifting. It will kind of get tricked and make the car react very funny when you start sliding sideways. You start to apply the brakes, the rear wheels lock up, and the computer kind of just wigs out and it wants to straighten the car out. But power steering is definitely recommended. These cars have, big front engines. It helps to get, over the actual grip levels at the front end of the car to have power steering. You see a lot of like Corolla guys and, some daily drivers running no power steering, frees up a little horsepower. Those cars are really lightweight, really small engines up front and a small tire. But in Formula Drift, you just have too much grip, too much weight, where power steering is very recommended and essentially in every single car out on grid.
Next question from the Lawdown. Hey Ryan and Chris, I'm on the verge of replacing some front end components. What is the advantage of using a Heim joint over a traditional ball joint? There are pros and cons to this question. I don't know all of the pros or all of the cons. I'll let Chris chime in as well. But as far as I understand, the Heim joint has a little bit more range of motion, but the ball joint is more robust. It can handle more abuse, depending on the size of the Heim joint, of course. And the Heim joint is used in a lot more applications than a ball joint. It's just a little bit easier. A lot of times it's smaller, and there's multiple different size ranges that you can use, and it's just more versatile. I hope that makes sense, and I hope I'm even saying that the correct things. If not, Chris is going to take over and handle it.
Well, the Heim joint's going to give you way more control. It has more range of motion than a traditional ball joint. It's also a lot stronger, and it is much more solid because it's got more of a casing around the actual Heim joint rod end itself. So you're going to have better steering feel or better rear end traction, less wheel hop, more control of your car in general, and you also get more adjustability as you can thread it in and out of the actual controller. Last up, we got Cross NOS 01 for damper/shocks on a 700 horsepower S13. Nice work. What are the stiffness on a scale of 0 to 15 for compression and extension for front and rear and the effects? Very confusing question. Trying to work through a little translation here, but what I'm guessing is you have 0 to 15 clicks on your shocks and you're trying to figure out where to set them for the compression and the extension for the front, in which how high you run the car. Very difficult to explain how to set up the spring rates, ride heights, and shock settings on a car that I've never seen, especially one where I don't even know what brand the shocks are. But the best way to do it is to always set your car up to have decent ground clearance, decent fender clearance. You never want to rub your wheels on your fenders or the inside wheel wells or anything like that. You also want to make sure that you're never bottoming out your shocks. So throw a zip tie on your the piston of your shock. Do a couple runs. Make sure you're not bottoming out that shock so that you still have all your travel. If you are bottoming out, raise your car up a little bit. And as far as the 0 to 15 scale, always start in the middle. If the car feels a little too slick, kind of skating around on top of the track, start clicking it down. If it feels like it's hooking and really sawing at the wheel, kind of trying to pull the steering wheel out of your hand, you stiffen it up a little bit. So it's all about how the car feels to you. So just get out there and drive. Well, thanks for watching this week's response video. As you can see, we are very busy. We're at the track testing our cars for Formula Drift Round 1. We're going to be hitting the road next week. We hope that you guys tune in and watch. But until then, you can watch Drift Garage next week. If you got any questions or comments, put them in the comments below. We'll see you next time.